Without any further ado, I'll invite Malia Probst up to talk to you about virtual reality, and then we'll have some conversation around it as well. Welcome. You're welcome. We want to give you a handheld. Or did it? Right. I think you turned on.
Is this thing on? Is this thing on? So Brent really inflated expectations, guys. So I don't know about the best person in the world to talk about it, but I'm here, and that's what you get. So let's take the bar, let's lower the expectations, and let's just have a little bit of fun with it, yeah? When I was looking at the poll earlier, I was actually surprised that it was like 9%, something like that, are thinking about it, are looking to kind of get into it. Brent really said it really well in that this is just another tool. This is just another tool in your tool chest. It's probably not going to replace what you are doing now. However, this is definitely something to start thinking about integrating, especially if you are looking to make a splash at your organization, at your business, if you want to get some nice marketing buzz around things. Implementing this type of technology in bite-sized pieces is where we're at right now. And we're also going to talk about why the human development industry is so poised to benefit from this technology. So when I was kind of thinking about what makes this room so special and what makes all of the people in this room unique, you guys are fully invested in human development. And no matter who you are, what you do, at some point in your life, you're going to go through school. You're going to have some type of education. If you start any job, when you start that job, you go through a bunch of training. And that training doesn't end on the day you get hired. You don't go through your training and then, orientation, okay, it's done. No, you guys are here. You've been in the industry, and you're still here, and you're still learning. So I'd really like to I want to take a second and actually say you guys are awesome for being here, for being invested in the evolution of humanity. You guys are being awesome for showing up and being so invested in human development. And that is so incredibly powerful. I was really excited about this laser pointer, by the way. I don't think I've played with one of these since I got in trouble for it in middle school. So anyway, what we're going to be squirrel. So it's like I'm the cat. So today we're going to be talking about what virtual reality is. We're just going to be addressing terms. We're going to be addressing definitions. We're going to be talking about all of these crazy terms that we're hearing in the news: virtual reality, augmented reality, 360 video. How do you keep up? It's kind of difficult. So we're going to kind of start at square one, and we're going to define things, and we're going to talk about definitions. So we're going to talk about what virtual reality is, and most importantly, we're going to talk about why it matters. Because it doesn't really matter what the tool does. Why does it matter to you? Why is this going to affect every single industry eventually? We're also going to talk specifically about why this tool is so incredibly important for education, for training, for skills transference, and human learning and development, because that is why you are here, and we're going to talk specifically about that, because it doesn't really matter how cool it is, how flashy it is, how are you going to use it, and why should you care about it. And we're going to talk about how this is, at the base of it, fundamentally a shift in computing. This is the next computing paradigm. This is where it's headed. The goggles look kind of big and bulky and kind of dorky right now, right? But those are going to shrink. It's going to get faster. Technology does what technology does, and it's going to keep going. So let's take a brief moment and talk about myself for a moment. You're probably like, who is this 25-year-old? And why should I be listening to anything she's saying? First of all, I will be celebrating my 30th birthday for the third time in December. I call myself a connector. And really what I do is I connect people and places, things, ideas, and teams, and bring them together, execute plans, and then we roll it out. I'm co-founder of a company called Reality Inspired. What we do there is we do virtual reality and augmented reality as marketing and sales tools for luxury brands. My business partner for that is right over there in front, Crystal Clifton. We just put a hand up, that gorgeous thing. There she is. Just go harass her or something later, if do me the favor. And then I'm also director of brand development for a company called VR Scout. We started in the beginning of 2015, so I've been around for a year and a half. Started covering the editorial side of things. I've built a really, really phenomenal, organic, lovely, loyal community, global, worldwide. We have 11 million monthly social reach, and then we're also one of the world's leading immersive media companies, and so kind of work as an agency model as well, and that's based in Los Angeles. So I don't make virtual reality. I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. I'm not a 3D modeler. I have really no technical background whatsoever. And that's where it comes as the connector, because I'm the one that sees the dots and then brings the dots together. So I know all the people who can do all that stuff. And then I also have the wonderful pleasure of getting to talk to so many incredible people who are so immersed in this industry, such incredibly talented technical skill set people that I learn so much on a daily basis. So I have 2 podcasts. Those are great resources for you guys to check out. The first one's called The Real Virtual Show, and that is interviews with leaders and revolutionaries in the VR AR industry. And the VR Scout Report is a weekly VR AR news wrap-up, so you can just keep up to date on all of the news that happens in the industry, because it's really difficult to keep up with. There's so much news coming out all the time. So we're going to talk about this in a moment, but I kind of wanted to, this is the period where I pick a couple of victims. This guy looks like a good victim. So the first question I ask on every single one of the Real Virtual Show podcast episodes is, what is virtual reality and why should we care about it? Because it doesn't matter what it is, it matters why we should care. What are we going to do with that tool, right? And what Brent said, this is a tool. A butter knife can cut butter, or it can stab someone. This is a tool. This is an incredibly powerful tool. So I'm going to ask that same question. And I like to ask the audience that question, what is virtual reality? Just because I kind of like to get a temperature. And the interesting thing is, even when I'm asking these world-renowned experts that have been in this industry for sometimes decades, nobody answers it the same. Nobody has ever answered this question the same. So there is no wrong question or answer. There's no wrong answer to this question. But I'm so picking on you. What's your name?
Ryan.
Ryan? Malia.
It's very serious.
Nice to meet you, Ryan.
Likewise.
Very nice to meet you. Where are you from?
Originally, Oceanside.
Oceanside? Oh, you don't have to drive that far. So I'm picking on you first, Ryan, because you seemed like, you'd be okay with it. So, what is virtual reality in your opinion? There's no wrong answer. I really just like to kind of.
I'd say like a digital immersive reality or experience. Yeah. Simulated.
Totally, yes.
So that's the right answer.
No, it's not. That wasn't a very good answer. That's terrible. No, that was awesome. Absolutely. A computer-generated simulation that transports you to another environment. I love it. Yeah. Pretty dead on. Pretty dead on, Ryan. I feel like I should pick on you, too. What's your name? Elaine? Yes. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet Malia. Where are you from? Tampa. I like Tampa. I just came from Miami. I forgot how humid that state is. I landed and my hair was like, Elaine, first of all, thanks for coming all this way. It was a little bit of a farther jog than Ryan had, but what do you think virtual reality is?
Well, he took my words. I would have said it's an immersive experience.
Yep. Great. So my work here is done. You guys know what this is. I'm just gonna head out. But there are so many different terms: virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, 360 video. There are so many terms coming out that even someone who is literally immersed in the industry, I have a hard time keeping track of all of the terms that are coming out all the time. I have been in the industry for a year and a half now, which it's like dog years, really. So like in virtual reality years, it's like 20 years. So we're gonna talk about what it means, because there are a lot of crazy definitions out there. It's really difficult to wrap your head around it, and you've seen all these different things, so let's just kind of get into it. So I'm not gonna throw another phrase that you guys have to learn. However, I have found that when I describe this as a spectrum of technology, that it seems to kind of make a little bit more sense to a lot of people. And so when we're talking about reality spectrum technology, I'm not going to keep saying that, but I could. We're really talking about immersion. And perhaps if you've been paying attention in the news, you've started to see some lovely articles by journalists who like to position things as conflict, because conflict drives clicks, right? So you might have started to see AR versus VR. Which one's going to be bigger? What's going to be better? Which one's going to be worth more? And it's kind of reductive, really. This is really just a spectrum. So on the one side, we have virtual reality. On the other side of the spectrum, we have augmented reality. And so if virtual reality, Ryan and Elaine had awesome answers. If virtual reality is a fully immersive digital environment, it takes up all of your senses, or sight and sound for right now. So if I had a virtual reality head-mounted display on right now, I wouldn't be able to see any of you. I would be fully immersed in a different environment. So then on the other side, with augmented reality, it would just be wearing a cool pair of glasses, where the overlaid on the real world, be able to see you, Ryan, be able to see you, Elaine, overlaid on my view would just be some type of digital overlay so that I could see a little bit more information. And if you notice on that spectrum, it's not black and white. There's a lot of space in the middle. So what are we going to do with that space in the middle? And that's kind of where that spectrum comes into play. So when I talked about how those head-mounted devices, how those goggles are kind of big and bulky and dorky looking right now, they're going to keep shrinking. They're going to get smaller, and we're eventually going to have devices that do it all, whether it's just enhancing your everyday world, your everyday work, in some way giving you more information to do more with your job, to do better at your job, or you just want to lay back and enjoy a cool experience and you just want to do it for entertainment. And so there's some interesting things that have kind of come out recently in our culture, and I kind of talk about them as training wheels for augmented reality and virtual reality. So an example of an early pop culture phenomenon, which is really a cultural touch point at this point, Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go uses your phone, you hold your phone up. You guys know what I'm talking about. You guys caught Pikachus, don't pretend you weren't. So is that true augmented reality? Not really. You know, you couldn't interact with the Pikachus or the Squirtles. I didn't play. I didn't. Actually, I dropped my phone down an elevator shaft playing Pokemon Go. Like, I downloaded it, and 40 minutes later, I dropped it down an elevator shaft. I'm not joking. Like 40 minutes later, I downloaded the app. 40 minutes later, it was down the bottom of the elevator shaft. So it's really dangerous, and all of those tragedies are true. Pokemon Go is a great way that the phrase augmented reality got put into popular culture, and it got put into our vocabulary. And if the general public now recognizes the phrase augmented reality, awesome. That's great. That's amazing. Another one, I don't know who here is on Snapchat. Guilty. The Snapchat lenses are actually quite sophisticated technology. And they acquired a company called Luxury, which does facial recognition mapping. And so when you put those funny filters on, and you have the puppy dog face or the golden halo, ladies, you know what I'm talking about. You don't have to put any makeup on, just put a filter on. That's another kind of a light version of augmented reality. And so 360 video here on the other side of that spectrum is an early glimpse of what true virtual reality is. So 360 video, you guys might have seen, you know, perhaps in a headset, perhaps in your Facebook feed. It's also supported on YouTube. You've seen these 360 videos where you can kind of click around, right? And that's awesome. It's super cool, and if you look at it in a headset, you are there. You're transported to a different environment. It's a generated environment. You are there. However, you can't affect your environment. You can't walk around in the environment. It's a fixed view, and you can't really do anything. Whereas true virtual reality, we have a 1-to-1 locomotion ratio. So that means I'm walking a foot in the real world, and I'm walking a foot in the virtual world. That's here with some of the heavy-duty PC-powered stuff. We'll get into that in a moment. And then capturing, there's some technology on the horizon, such as photogrammetry and volumetric capture. We're not going to get into that, but there is stuff that captures live action like 360 video does now, and that would also enable us to walk around in the environment. That's a few years off, so we're not going to get too far into that. But it is great that you now recognize the phrase and you're seeing it in your Facebook feed. So let's talk a little bit about the quality. You know, there are kind of like 3 general tiers, really, right now out there. And the lowest quality tier and most accessible is the one that's powered by your smartphone. Who would notice that you forgot your phone before you forget, or before you realize you forgot your wallet or your keys? Every single person in this room has a phone. There's yours right in front of you. Ryan's on his. Hers is right there. It's either in front of you, it's in your hand, it's close by, it's in your purse. These are our lifelines. Let's remember that the iPhone came out in 2007. That was less than 10 years ago. That's crazy. So we're walking around with $1 million worth of 1980 technology in our pocket. And it's a great alarm clock, too. And then on that middle tier, the step up, it's console-powered stuff. Those aren't really even out yet. PlayStation VR is going to be the first one to hit the market, and that is coming out on October 13th. That is going to plug into your existing PlayStation 4, or perhaps you sprang for the recent update, the PlayStation 4 Pro, that does it in 4K. Actually, PlayStation really, they broke the traditional console cycle to release that update, and they did that for PlayStation VR. You do have to have a PlayStation 4 or a 4 Pro to plug the PlayStation VR in. And because PlayStation 4 has an almost 40 million worldwide install base, I'm really, really interested to see what those sales numbers are going to look like after the holidays. I'm really interested. So smartphone at the bottom, but it's the most accessible. We've got a console there in the middle. And then at the highest quality, we have the PC-powered stuff. And so what's accessible right now to the general public is the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive. Both of those, once you get the touch controllers for Oculus, which are coming out soon, they both add up to about $800. So that's the price point. And that doesn't include the PC that you need to power it. So you're looking at, realistically, you're looking at a minimum $1,500 purchase to get one of those in your homes today. Quite frankly, I wouldn't do it. I don't have one in my house. I have, some at the office, but that is very robust, and it does take a really, really beefy gaming PC to be able to power them. Less than 1% of Americans have a PC powerful enough to run these. You can't run it on your MacBook. You can't do that. So the fact that it's such a small number of Americans that even have the technology that has to power this heavy-duty, really immersive, awesome, high-level stuff, that's why you're seeing, who has those computers? Who already has those computers? Gamers. Hardcore gamers. Very hardcore gamers. Like heavy metal gamers. So that's why a lot of the early content is gaming focused, and that's why you've probably seen or perhaps perceived that this is something for gaming. This is something for video games. This is what gamers do, because that's the current install base. So wouldn't you make content for the install base that has the hardware that they need to plug it in? Yeah. So as you see, on that lowest tier, the smartphone tier, that's the biggest market size. And as we move up the pyramid, as that quality increases, that market size also decreases because of that price point. So when I say smartphone, I want to do a quick note about this. When I say that smartphone tier down there at the bottom, the Samsung Gear VR is really the best option at this point. However, tomorrow, Google is releasing more details about Google Daydream. This is going to be huge. Absolutely enormous. Why? Because they are setting the standard for every single hardware manufacturer that is going to be running the Android operating system has to meet a certain bar of specifications. It has to have a certain GPU, it has a certain graphic power, pixel resolution, density, computational power, so they're looking at a lot of things. So they are defining where the bar is. And as much as I love my iPhone, Android has 85% of the market. That's 85% of the global market. When they continue to stay in that Android operating system, all of the future Android operating system phones are going to have to meet a certain specification level per Google. Google's kind of big. So that's a big deal. So pay attention tomorrow. Google Daydream is coming out, and that's everything. It's hardware, it's specifications, it's software, it's the entire pipeline. So I don't even know if I can overstate how important this is. It's quite important, so pay attention to that tomorrow. So, all right, we talked about definitions, we talked about quality, we talked about the different sorts of differences in terms of market size. As that quality increases, that market size gets smaller. Great. Why should we care about it? Because you really shouldn't really learn about anything if you don't care about it, unless they're making you for your job. So why should we care about this? We should care about this because this will eventually touch every single industry. Every single one. Because this is a shift in computing. And we will get into that in a few moments. This will touch every single industry. So we are at the very nascent stages of this technology. This is incredibly powerful tool. You'll notice, perhaps, I left off a few things on this list. I left off gaming because, we kind of get that, you know. I left off entertainment, general entertainment, as well as adult entertainment. And I also left off the learning and development side of things because we're going to get into that on its own because that's why you guys are here. So we're going to dive into that on its own. So healthcare is being revolutionized by this technology. And when we're even talking about training nurses, training doctors, training surgeons, it's already out there. It's already doing it. And so nurses are actually being trained how to spot the signs of a patient that it is rapidly deteriorating. So skin color, kind of like the pallor of their skin or kind of how their eyes look, body language. And by being in a room with a computer-generated human, you are so much more able to then take those lessons and actually recognize those signs in real life. So we can prevent hospital mortality rates, or at least greatly reduce hospital mortality rates by better healthcare training. They're live streaming surgeries now. They did the first live streamed virtual reality surgery happened over in London, and it was a prostate surgery, so very sexy surgery. And they also did another one in Mexico, and it was a bariatric surgery as well. So when we're talking about training specifically with healthcare, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. So when you're in medical school, like, you have to wait years before you are able to get to operate, pseudo-operate, on a cadaver. There's a cadaver business. We shouldn't even have that. That's so gross. We have a cadaver business, and it takes medical students a certain level to be able to have access to those cadavers to be able to practice on them. But if we are able to get these first-year medical students in immersive environments, in real-life operating situations, first of all, they might know sooner if they actually want to go into it or not, and then it's going to prepare them even better. When we're talking about sports, yes, this is going to be amazing to watch sports. It is going to be so cool to be able to be on the field with your favorite team. Brian Fanzo is like, oh my God, I can't wait to be on the field with the Steelers. He's a rabid Steelers fan. So not only is it going to be great to watch sports and a different way for fans to be able to engage with their favorite sports teams and heroes and get behind the scenes access and all that, but this is actually being used to train athletes. There's a system called the Striver system, and it was developed up in Stanford by a guy named Jeremy Bailenson, and it's actually, he teamed up with the former kicker of Stanford, and they wanted to see how this would affect training. So what they do is they take 360-degree cameras, and during practice, they put a bunch of those 360-degree cameras around the field. Then they take that footage, they put it in a headset, and the quarterback gets to relive moments. They get to be exactly where they were and see exactly why that pocket collapsed. They can see exactly why that blitz just ran them over. They can see why they missed that pass. So this does away with tape watching. They're using it in the NBA as well. WNBA, it's in 5 or 6 NFL teams, 5 or 6 college teams, and that was actually instituted last year's season. So for real estate is really incredible. Real estate is an amazing, tangible, very real enterprise solution right now. Especially for any type of space, when we are in a virtual reality environment, what happens is it wakes up our limbic system. It wakes up our lizard brain, the one that sometimes doesn't control emotion very well, fear, anger, kind of all of these lizard brain characteristics. It opens up that part of our brain. And so for spaces specifically, for real estate, there is nothing else like it. You can view 12 homes in the time that it would take you. You could take 12 virtual reality tours in the time it would take you to drive to one. Literally just one. So not only does it save time and money, but it makes things incredibly more efficient, either on the agent side of things, because the agent doesn't have to have their world disrupted. You know, people make real estate meetings and they cancel. They don't show up. For the home seller, if you're selling your home, have fun, because you're going to have to upend your entire life every single time that house has a showing. You got to get your family out, you got to get the pets out, you got to get everyone out. Everything has to look spotless. If I was selling my home, I would say I want to do virtual reality tours, and then once someone has seen it on a virtual reality tour, they've gotten past that kind of first gate, come on in and see the real thing. So if you can see 12 virtual reality tours in the time it would take you to see one in person, take 12 virtual reality tours, then pick your top 3, and then go visit the top 3 in real life. You know, it's not a perfect replacement, but it's the next best thing to be able to see it. So real estate is happening right now. Design. Any and all types of design. Whether it's graphic design, whether it's automotive design, whether it's engine design, aviation design, construction, any type of design. Did I put architecture on there? Yeah, I already put that down there. For design, basically what this does is if people all over the world can be looking at the same thing together, and not just looking, but actually in the same virtual space together, and walking around a 3D prototype, think of how much time that saves. You don't have to go back and forth with designs and blueprints. It cuts down what would be a typical 8-month back and forth about specs, designs, prototypes. It narrows that down so much. Again, time, money. What it does is if everyone is looking at the same thing, the same 3-dimensional object in a virtual space, let's say, I don't know, my engineer is in Mexico and I'm in Los Angeles. I'm a designer and, she's the engineer. Have you ever noticed there's always a mismatch in communication styles between designers and engineers and manufacturers? What this does is this closes that feedback loop so that we're talking about the same thing in real time. Sales and marketing, that's easy, that's obvious. Brands are getting on board in a big, big way with this. This is a phenomenal way for brands to be able to engage with their clients in ways that has never been possible before. You want to test drive a Volvo? Download the Volvo VR app and test drive a Volvo right now in virtual reality. Jaguar is doing it. Audi's doing it. Lexus is doing it. And they're actually, I don't remember if it's Audi or Lexus, but they're actually implementing design your own car with the HTC Vive in showrooms. So you can design your car from the ground up and then see exactly what it would be like to sit in that car with this particular color seat and that, this dash and this doodad, this bells and whistle, that bell and whistle, whatever it is. So for sales and marketing, absolutely enormous. Travel. Travel is a huge business. And it's really expensive to travel. It's really time-consuming to travel. Elaine, did you enjoy that plane ride over when you're kind of crammed in that tin can? So whether it's a business travel or whether it's a leisure travel, you can see the resort before you go there. So you already know where everything is. By taking a quick virtual reality tour, of the Hyatt Regency here in Mission Bay, you would know exactly where this was already. You would know exactly where your room was already. You wouldn't have to look at the map where the pool was because you already saw the pool. And we're talking about business. How many times can you not seal a deal until you fly somewhere, look someone in their eye, and shake their hand in real life? Not to mention waste a ton of gas, expense, fuel, leaving a really big carbon footprint to go across the globe to be able to meet with someone to seal a deal, right? So if we can meet virtually all over the world and we have the next best thing to actually being there, and as the technology improves, the eye tracking improves, the facial recognition mapping improves, the body language that we take for granted in our face-to-face meetings is baked into that. And not only does that save you time and your back sitting in that plane, it also reduces our carbon footprint. Why are we flying across the world when we can meet, I don't know, just like a kind of a boring office environment, when we can meet on a virtual beach? Why not, So for architecture and construction, again, for that closing of the feedback loop, so that an architect can give the constructor, the general contractor, a tour of what that house or property or business or condo or whatever it is. They can give them a tour beforehand so that perhaps mistakes can be prevented. Like, oh, you know what, that door, I would really love it if that door is a little higher. And you know what, I'd really like 3 windows instead of 2. Prevent mistakes before they happen, and perhaps even upsell in the process. Shopping. It's interesting that brick and mortar is really still hanging around in the shopping thing. Thank you, Amazon. So we talk about e-commerce, right? This is v-commerce. So if you're able to choose, let's say you're sitting in your living room, and you're able to, through hologram technology or virtual reality technology or augmented device, whatever, that you can see what your avatar looks like in that bathing suit, then you never have to stand under those awful lighting ever again. So Amazon is definitely working on this. News and journalism. Being able to see, and not just see, but being able to be transported, to see different perspectives, and the way that other people who perhaps seem so distant, or as though it's not real because it's just on a television. It's just a headline in a newspaper. It's just a tweet in your Twitter feed. It's pretty removed. We're really removed. And if we can be transported to other places in the world and actually see what is going on, that is so wonderful for humanity. And I think that will really make us realize that we're all just kind of trying to get through this life together. We're all kind of doing the best we can. So I think that's actually going to build a compassion for humanity in a way that perhaps we haven't considered. The Huffington Post they bought a virtual reality company called Riot. And what Riot does is they do immersive journalism. So they show you Syria. They show you refugee camps. And once you are transported to a refugee camp in Jordan, for example, and it's heartbreaking. It's called The Displaced. It's a really, really wonderful one. It's very well done. That was actually commissioned by the UN. And when you are in a refugee camp in Jordan, and you're seeing how these people live, you're not just seeing it. You're not seeing it on a 2-dimensional screen. You're there. You are in the tent. And you look down, and this little girl just looks up at you and you feel like you are making eye contact with this other human. It's incredibly powerful for showing more context of news as well. I think that live streaming has been able to show so many more different perspectives and angles and opinions and views outside of mainstream media. So citizen journalism, thanks to social media, thanks to live streaming, we can see so much more of the world that we're not seeing on Fox, we're not seeing on MSNBC, we're not seeing on the mainstream media. That is very, very powerful, and we're talking about 360 cameras. That's the next level, because we can live stream, right? But I'm still framing it. I'm still making a choice of what I'm framing. I'm still making an editorial decision in what I show. And when you have a 360 camera, nothing can hide. Shows all of it. So I actually was speaking with a police officer in Miami, and they are in this pilot program to equip their officers with 360-degree cameras because they want to show the full story. They want to be able to show 360 degrees of that situation. Live events, shows, festivals, music performances, that's awesome. Totally awesome. Live Nation and Citibank or Citigroup, whatever. Live Nation and Citi actually just teamed up with a company called NextVR. NextVR just raised $80 million in their Series B round. They're located in Orange County. They do phenomenal things with live streaming live events. So whether it is a front row seat to the Dolly Parton concert that went on at the Hollywood Bowl over the past week and that I didn't get to make, I love Dolly Parton. Live events, you can be transported anywhere to be able to see your favorite artist, your favorite singer, whatever the case may be. You can get a front row ticket anywhere and to be able to go to any festival. I was, I don't know, this was probably like 9 months ago or something, and I was talking to a client of mine that I was consulting with, and it's a large sporting venue in Los Angeles. And they wanted to bring in live 360 streaming of the venue. And he's like, oh, we want to have, 360 camera here. We want to have it here. We want to have a couple of different perspectives. I was like, oh, do you want to put one in the bleachers? Put one in the seats so it's like you're there with the people? Because that's part of going to a sporting event. Like, you're there. You feel the energy. You're surrounded by people. Everyone's cheering. That's part of the reason why you go. Don't you want to put one there? He's like, no, I don't really want to put one there. I was like, why? He's like, well, the camera might get damaged. It's like, or we're gonna have to build a glass cage around it, and so it doesn't get damaged or broken or anything, and then it, might get reflection from the glass. I don't want to do that. No, my friend. What you do is you turn the seats around that 360 camera into advertising real estate. And so you sell those seats to brands who put all the pretty people drinking all the whatever things, consuming whatever products, wearing whatever brands around that camera. So you just paid for a third of your budget by bringing in that type of ad revenue. Also, on the revenue side of things, there's only a limited number of courtside seats. 50-yard line seats, there's a limited number. Let's say I have, just, throwing out numbers, let's say I have 10 courtside seats. And I sell each of those courtside seats for $10,000. Well, why wouldn't I put up a 360 camera and then get 100,000 people in that seat for $10? You do the math. Health and wellness is so incredibly important to me, and this is something that is very, very near and dear to my heart. I just got back from a 5-day silent meditation retreat, so I'm really glad I still not at doc. I was like worried. So meditation has been really doing awesome stuff in this particular space. Guided VR came out a couple years ago. There's this phenomenal company in Chicago called Cubicle Ninjas, and the guy behind Cubicle Ninjas, his name's Josh Farkas. He is the first person to do a guided meditation in virtual reality. And hey, you might have some guided meditation apps on your phone, right? But if we can make that more immersive, if we can transport you to a relaxing environment, let's say you are stuck in a, let's say you're in a, I'm trying to figure the right words here, like a senior citizen center where the elderly don't get a lot of stimulation, they don't get to get out, they don't get to travel, and they're just kind of stuck. Or a hospital. Let's say you're recuperating from a surgery. Let's say you're recuperating from an illness. And instead of sitting in that hospital bed, instead of sitting in that drab, sterile, not comfortable environment, instead of doing that, you could hang out on a beach for a while. Why not? You know, this is actually even being used to test for mild cognitive impairment, which is an early sign of Alzheimer's. So if we can catch Alzheimer's before it really gets started, we can do certain things to slow it down or ameliorate the process or make people more comfortable. Also, as a pain distraction, at the University of Washington, and this research was done in the 90s. So the hardware and the technology was not as polished as it is today, and the hardware and the technology today is still very early days. At the University of Washington, they did a study with burn victims. And it turns out that the most painful part of a burn victim's recuperation process is when their wounds are cleaned. It's incredibly painful. So what they would do on this program, in this study, they would put these burn victims during the wound cleansing process, they would put them in a virtual reality game. That virtual reality game, as a pain distraction technique, was shown to have the same efficacy as morphine. Morphine. So why are we giving people pills and getting people addicted to pharmaceuticals and painkillers? It's so difficult to get off of a narcotic after you've been legally prescribed it by your doctor. There are better things out there. And virtual reality has immense, immense potential for that. Oh, and phobias, too, like fear of spiders. They're putting people, like people have arachnophobia, they're putting them in a virtual environment with a spider, and the spider like gets closer and closer, and over the period of like 2 hours, gets closer and closer, and then you can actually be in the room with a real big hairy spider. Like, this is actually working. Fear of public speaking. PTSD, traumatic brain injury. There's been a lot of incredible, very well documented research that shows how powerful this technology can be as a therapeutic tool. So, and this research has been going on in academia since the 90s, actually a little earlier, but they did a lot of research in the 90s at USC with Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. And so they would, who have PTSD and would have awful symptoms. You can't walk through life without constantly being on edge. Your nervous system is so pushed to the limit every single day because you are so scared that there might be a bomb around the corner. There could be a sniper behind you. Everything is a threat. And when your nervous system is pushing the gas like that all the time, not only is it incredibly difficult for you to go through daily life, it is incredibly difficult for your loved ones because they don't always understand why there are these emotional outbursts or nightmares. But it's really, really difficult to get past that. And the traditional therapy is cognitive behavior therapy and then exposure therapy as well. And so what they would do is they would just go and they would just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and then talk about it some more. But what they would do with these virtual reality rooms, they would actually take these veterans and put them back under the very close supervision of their therapist, of course. They would put them back into these traumatic environments. And through that repeated exposure, it was incredibly effective. And not just for Iraq, and not just for Afghanistan veterans. It was shown to have the same efficacy for Vietnam veterans. That trauma is over 40 years old. And when you think about it, trauma is really the one thing that all of us humans have in common. And it could be your ordinary garden variety trauma. You know, maybe you're overweight as a kid and you got teased and I don't know, your dad didn't love you or whatever. Or it can be incredibly deep, deep trauma, violence, abuse, rape, and there's such, we were talking about a spectrum earlier, the spectrum of trauma, everyone's on it somewhere. It's either very, very deep and really extreme, or it's lighter. But every single human has trauma in some way. So for health and wellness, this is so incredibly important. Actually, Deepak Chopra. Deepak just put out a guided meditation virtual reality application. And I was able to try it. I got to interview Deepak, and it's really good. It's really awesome. And so he's actually going to put these in stations, and like kiosks in airports, in hospitals, and waiting rooms. And I'm really interested to see the data when that comes back from that. But this fundamentally will affect every single industry eventually. And so don't think that this is just for video games, or this is just for entertainment, or this is just another way that brands can shove their message down your throat. This will affect everything. So there's a lot of big money out there. A lot of really big companies in this space. Perhaps some of you are familiar with what is referred to as the first wave of virtual reality. We'll get into that in a bit. But this is, some people are calling it the renaissance of virtual reality, because this has really been bubbling away behind closed doors for quite some time. So just looking at big companies up there, look at Google. Daydream's coming out tomorrow. IBM, Autodesk, Intel, Amazon, HTC. HTC is a hardware manufacturer. They teamed up with a company called Valve, which is the largest PC gaming ecosystem in the world. They teamed up, and they made a hardware called the HTC Vive. And if you remember back to our triangle, the top of the top for the quality, that would be HTC. Sony is on board. They've been doing a lot of interesting stuff. They recently just acquired a company called Reality One in Los Angeles. It's a virtual reality production company. Samsung is heavily invested. I told you how the Samsung Gear VR is the best experience out there today. It really is. And I have a Samsung 360 camera. I want to, at some point, I want to get like a big group 360s. It's called a groupie now, by the way. So I would love to get a groupie with you guys, and I'm going to shoot that to Brent. So that'll be fun. So huge companies, right? You see Apple up there. Apple's being very, very secretive about what they're doing, but they are working very hard behind closed doors. Their R&D has increased by over 300% over the last couple of years. They have acquired numerous companies in 3D mapping, virtual reality, augmented reality. They've acquired a lot of talent as well. They acquired one of the most well-known, eminent researchers in the world from Virginia Tech. His name is Doug Bauman. They acquired him back in December. They're reported to have a team of hundreds working on this. And when that iPhone came out in 2007, it was awesome. It made your razor look real dated. Do you remember those razors? I didn't have a razor. I was really jealous. I was a BlackBerry person for a while, but I think that we're going to see a really fantastic augmented reality device coming out of Apple, because Apple is doing what Apple always does, which is sit back, wait, and then they will release the most well-designed product at the perfect pinnacle of demand. And people go crazy for it. There were a lot of MP3 players before the iPod came out. So since the end of 2015, since Q4 in 2015, the investments in the space have increased over 5 times. It keeps going up. In the first half alone of 2016, there has been over $1.3 billion invested in the industry. And there are a few different valuations out there as to what this industry will be worth in 2020. I just threw a dart and I just picked DigiCapital's estimation. They're predicting this is going to be a $120 billion industry in 2020. So it's a lot of big companies, it's a lot of big money, and there are companies that are very, very invested to make sure that this does not fail. You remember when we were talking about the reality spectrum? And we were talking about 360 video, and I mentioned how you probably have seen it in your Facebook feeds. Facebook spent $2 billion in the spring of 2014 to buy a little company called Oculus. So they have some skin in the game. They have a very vested interest in making sure that the 1.6 billion people around the world eventually use this technology. And so when you see those 360 videos show up in your Facebook feed, know that it is the tip of the iceberg. Microsoft is doing some pretty awesome stuff on the augmented reality side of that spectrum. The Microsoft HoloLens, they have a partnership with NASA, and they actually send HoloLens, these goggles that you can see the real world, and then overlaid, you can see more information to help you do your job better, more effectively. So think about it. Think of how many things you have to know how to do as an astronaut. Like, you're the only ones up there. You have to be able to fix plumbing on the International Space Station. You have to be able to then attend to the biodynamic garden up on the International Space Station. You have to be able to fix a robot. And so if you have a pair of glasses that gives you more information to be able to do those jobs, those vastly different jobs, more effectively and better, I mean, NASA wants it. But they have a guy on the ground. So you have an expert on the ground here on Earth, and they communicate back and forth via the HoloLens to be able to enable these astronauts to do very specific jobs really, 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 really well. So we talked about what it is. We talked about how it's going to affect every industry, and we're going to talk specifically about how it's going to affect you guys, because this is so immersive, this is so powerful, this medium is incredibly powerful. This cannot be overstated. And learning and training and human development perhaps is the most important of all. So this list barely scratches the surface of what's out there. I'm not going to get into every single one of those. If you're interested in neural learning, check out Mind Maze. If you're interested in foreign language and how to increase that type of skills transference, check out Fluent Worlds. Corporate training, it's incredibly, incredibly important. Google Expeditions is actually, with Michelle Obama, is taking field trips, virtual field trips, across the schools of America. So that if you are in inner city Chicago, you can see what Italy looks like. You can take a trip to the Big Apple. You're able to see what the Roman ruins looked like before they became the ruins. Wouldn't you rather, instead of listening to a teacher talk, be able to get inside what the teacher was talking about and be able to take a tour of, like a magic school bus tour, and be able to take a tour of the human body like in a blood molecule? I'm an experiential learner. Fitness, training. So it's almost here. This is the next computing platform. This is a fundamental shift in how humans collaborate, communicate all over the world. This is not a new concept. In fact, as far back as Plato and Socrates, actually check out Plato's Republic, where they talked about the cave environment, talking about the difference between illusion, perception, and reality. In 1920s, it was the first flight simulator. In 1962, Sensorama came out. And then the Sword of Damocles was kind of the first head-mounted display. And it was by a guy named Ivan Sutherland. And he developed a great program at the University of Utah. And then, of course, the first wave of commercial, general public VR, the failed Virtual Boy. Rest in peace. This is really fundamentally just a shift in how we compute. Look at how huge those monster computers are. They took up an entire room. Okay, then PCs came out in kits. And Steve Jobs came along and gave us, this kind of nice little personal computer, the laptop revolution and evolution of the 1990s. In 1997, the first Palm Pilot came out. We weren't sure how we wanted to use it, but we knew it was cool. And then Steve Jobs came back around, and that first iPhone, like we're talking about, came out in 2007. It didn't even have an app store. You remember that? And now we are at the very, very, very beginnings of this VR, AR revolution. So the first consumer version came out in March. Tip of the iceberg, guys. We are now moving into spatial computing. We are being able to compute in more intuitive ways. When you think about it, the XY axis and scrolling a mouse around is kind of arbitrary. So if we can get into virtual environments together and be able to compute more intuitively, that is where this is headed. This is not a matter of if, this is a matter of time. This is where it's going. This is the future. So those big, dorky, clunky headsets, those are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. They're going to look like really cool glasses. You see what Snapchat just released. Spectacles. Snapchat has been working secretly on augmented reality for years. They acquired a company called Virgins Labs, which used to make smart glasses. Luxury, the company that I referenced earlier about the filters and the lenses. Huge. Snapchat has 150 million daily users. Rabid fan base. As a comparison, Twitter has 30 million. And I love Twitter. I really do. So, it's here. The future is here. And every single one of you in this room is committed to helping the human condition and helping human development. So with the power of this tool that Brent said, he said it so well, this is a tool. Doesn't matter. How are you going to use it? So you can, that's me. That's me. I am a self-confessed Snapchat. Don't follow me if you don't like fun, first of all. Don't do that. I'm at the Malia on Twitter. That's a great place to get a hold of me, and you can also access both of my podcasts through my Twitter, and then you can go to vrscout.com for the VR Scout side of things to be able to see awesome, amazing content covering the space. And then Reality Inspired is the business that I run with that lovely lady over there. Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome.